Beautiful day for another episode of the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. There has been a lot of headlines about the Cincinnati Bengals this week. A lot of them not so great. One of them on Wednesday afternoon was a bit optimistic. We're going to talk about all that, including another devastating loss by the Cincinnati Bengals. Their, fourth straight, right? And just a string. It's just been a chaotic year, to say the least, and more chaos, both good and bad, as I mentioned, occurred this week and on Wednesday. So we're going to talk about it. He's John. I am Anthony. John, oh boy, how are we doing after Sunday, my friend?
You know, Sunday was kind of a reprieve for me, kind of going back to normal. I was in West Virginia for a handful of days with a lot of college friends. A handful of them are Steelers fans because it's just how it goes. You're going to run into those guys every now and then in the country because there's so goddamn many of them. But I was in Appalachia. You know, I was in the mountain range, and obviously you go up to Pittsburgh and everything like that. I thought that would bring some good fortune to the team. It did not. So I was kind of feeling it on Sunday, and then watching everything go down kind of brought me back to reality a little bit.
Yeah, losses like that'll do that, and displays of all kinds of stuff on the field will do that. And we're going to talk about that and a lot more on this episode of the Orange and Black Insider, part of the Believe podcast network and the Believe in Cincy, BLEAV in Cincy, CINCY podcast channel, along with a slate of other great shows. Go check out all of them and leave us a review through your favorite platform. Or if you are watching us live, give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel, all that good stuff that make us feel good about ourselves. Please do that. We appreciate all of you listening. And speaking of appreciation, we appreciate the fine folks at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And boy, if people listened to Ben Roethlisberger on his podcast preceding this game, they could have probably made some money. This game was tight for a little bit, and then it just complete floodgate situation opened on the Bengals. So Steelers, while they were favorites, ended up way surpassing FanDuel's line on that one. And we'll talk more about the Patriots game coming up, lines there, etc. But our thanks to FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, for sponsoring the show. Link is in the YouTube and Facebook show descriptions. So go check that out. And of course, please bet responsibly. Our show is also brought to you by FOCO, the fans only company. They have exclusive lines of merch. I believe they just dropped some new bobbleheads, as they tend to do throughout the season as well. Link to all of the exclusive Bengals merch on foco.com is in the show descriptions on the same video streaming platforms and on the little article that we wrote up on cincyjungle.com. Those are linked there too. So go check out all that stuff and let them know that we sent you. Okay, well, let's start with some good news because I think everybody's been bombarded with bad news. And for those on X, we have been engaging in a lot of debate and been introduced to kind of a darker side, an uglier side of Steelers Nation, I guess, this week. That being said, Wednesday brought, I guess it's optimism. It's kind of eye-opening. It's like, really? A guy who was slated to return maybe towards the new year, if at all this year, Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow was a full participant in Wednesday's practice this week. And obviously, if he's practicing already in full Wednesday, depending on how that toe feels, you would expect him to participate in some fashion over the next couple of days here leading up to the Patriots game. The Bengals season is on life support, and that's putting it lightly at 3-7. They basically need to win out or maybe can suffer one more loss, and that includes games against the resurgent Patriots at Paycor Stadium Sunday. That includes a game against the Buffalo Bills. That includes the Ravens, all kinds of stuff. So, John, talk to me about your feelings about Joe Burrow coming back to practice Wednesday. There were signs of it kind of last week. He was lingering around practice. He was limited, that sort of thing. But now it's all of a sudden hit the accelerator.
I refuse to speculate about any of this because, number one, it's an injury that we naturally aren't going to know a lot about. We know very little about injuries in the first place. We just know about what they typically entail in terms of a recovery time, in terms of a ramp-up period. Everything about this since November 10th, when he was cleared to practice, has been kind of eye-opening. And I guess it's not too surprising that there was another head-turning moment in which he was practicing in full. The plan was to see what he can do in 11-on-11 this week. I didn't expect that to be him being a full participant in practice. Obviously, you see that in, like you said, the early part of the week. And considering he was practicing last week, albeit on a limited basis, it makes sense to potentially expect him to be out there on Sunday in a game in which, like you said, it's pretty beneficial if they would win compared to lose. So I refuse to speculate as to whether or not he's ahead of schedule, if they're rushing him back. I think all those thoughts are going through our minds right now because we just don't really know what to think. This is all kind of happening a lot quicker than we would have expected. And yeah, like last week when he said that, we're going to see how the next couple of weeks goes, he could have been talking about how his own recovery was going, how the team was doing, if it's even worth him to come back at all. I just think the safest thing for any of us, whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's people listening to this, the safest thing for any of us to assume is that if he's practicing in full, it's because he's good enough to practice. It's because he's healthy enough to do so, and not the fact that for all the faults that this team has, they've historically been pretty good at recovering guys and being responsible about that and doing it so in a quickly and timely fashion. 20 years ago, Carson Palmer came back so much quicker from a terrible knee injury than any of us would have thought. It's happened before. Joe Burrow himself did it 4 years ago. Like, that's the one of the shining things I think this franchise can, hang its cap on, their training staff and their ability to get guys in and out of that room in a quick and effective manner. I think a lot of people complain about their training staffs. A lot of fans complain about their team's training staffs. I don't think Bengals fans have a lot of complaints about their training staff, and I think that's for good reason. So I tend to believe that if the guy's practicing, he's obviously the most valuable, person in that building. They don't want to risk his health, especially long term in a season in which they're 3-7. If he's practicing full, I'm inclined to believe that he's capable of doing so, and he's capable of playing Sunday if it comes down to that. As long as he feels good for the next couple of days.
It feels weird. You're right in a lot of respects here. It feels weird complimenting the Bengals training staff and conditioning staff because prior to Marvin Lewis, it was a laughingstock. I mean,
right.
And even maybe some of those times, the Antonio Bryant fiasco and all kinds of stuff. But you're right. For the most part, they have these guys, particularly their star quarterbacks who have suffered these catastrophic injuries, have come back and played well when they do come back. And while Burrow has suffered a slew of injuries in his career, those seasons where he rebounds from those, or in season when he rebounds from some of those, he tends to play pretty well. And look, this is also a two-way street, John, kind of to your point. Yeah, the team is keeping a close eye on things. The conditioning and recovery team on the squad is keeping a close eye on things. But Joe Burrow is a man. Joe Burrow can talk about, hey, I don't feel right, or hey, this feels way better than I thought. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to practice. Let's push it. And if now these next couple of days will be telling too. If he's out there again, even on a limited basis, but if he's out there again, especially on a full participant the next couple of days, that tells you that's pretty much almost a green light, right? If there's a did not practice or, that sort of thing, that's a different story. But I do think these next couple of days are critical in terms of when we see Joe Burrow back. I know people are saying, well, maybe because the team is just hanging on by a thread for any kind of playoff hope, maybe they are rushing. But like I said, I think this is it's a two-way street. He's going to communicate if something isn't right or if he's not ready. And he knows the kind of sway he has within that organization. So he's going to speak up if something isn't right.
Yeah, and I think I really don't think it would have mattered what happened Sunday. If he was feeling good enough to be a full participant, I don't think that they would decline him of that work, especially when they plan on eventually getting him back. Like the sooner that he gets that work and he's able to get that work, might as well just give it a test and see how it goes, right? Because
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's still a controlled environment. It's still practice. They're not giving him too much more than he can handle, and obviously there are limitations as to what you can do in practice nowadays in the NFL. So yeah, I think regardless of what happened Sunday, and obviously it wasn't ideal in any circumstance, like this was probably something that they were going to just see day to day, see how he feels, and if he's ready to go, he's ready to go. Like this timeline has jumped from mid-December to Thanksgiving to Schefter saying, the Buffalo game after Thanksgiving to now potentially here in the Patriots, where we all kind of assumed that regardless, this wasn't on the table, and now it is. So again, I want to reiterate that none of us know anything about this. The entire knowledge of the situation is contained inside the walls of Paycor Stadium, probably contained within the highest offices and the training room. That's it. Everything else, every other piece of information that you're hearing is complete speculation. His mindset, the Bengals' mindset, them rushing him back, no one knows anything. And obviously, Burrow, we know him as a person, as an ultra competitor, someone who wants to play football. Regardless of that, regardless of how the Bengals are doing as far as the season goes, he's their top quarterback. And if he's able to play, he's going to play regardless of the state of the season. So that's just, I think you just have to take it at face value, because anything else is just, you're just asking to be made a fool of at this point.
Well, Flacco overall has been playing well. Last week was a bit of a disaster, and James Hawley in our live Facebook chat brings up a question that also kind of provides a nice segue into, recapping a little bit of everything that happened in that Steelers game. The one of which that, and the questions here are ones I think a lot of people are asking to themselves. What does Burrow being around and now fully participating do to the team mentally? Does it provide a spark, you think? I think it provides a spark regardless. Had Flacco not had that performance last week, I think maybe the spark would have been a little bit dimmer. But now, you have your leader back and everything. So I think that obviously resonates in that locker room and with those players. Joe Burrow doesn't tackle. Joe Burrow doesn't play defense. Joe Burrow, and granted, the defense played a tick better in this one against the Steelers. I mean, you look at the returns for touchdowns and all that kind of stuff. Overall, the defense played probably more similar to a level, say, against the Jaguars or Browns earlier this year, instead of what we saw, this historic collapse in the middle of the season here. But I think the one thing now that everybody's kind of, okay, again, losses are piling up, your playoff hopes are dwindling, but also, John, Joe Flacco looked like a 40-year-old guy who had been taking some hits the last couple of weeks in this one. And I mean, no disrespect. He has played out of his mind, especially given the situation he was just thrown in. But he took a hit early he already had the AC joint issue in the throwing arm. He took a hit by TJ Watt in the game where his arm was pinned over his head and then landed on the other arm. He just looked like, I'm sore and I'm hurting in this one. And I'm not making excuses for the guy and all of that. Like I said, I think he has played well beyond expectations, and I give him major kudos for what he's done since joining Cincinnati. But you said outside circumstances don't or shouldn't necessitate a rush back by Burrow to the lineup. But what you and I saw, at least from Flacco, and just looked like a guy who was in some pain Sunday, maybe there is a little bit more urgency to see number 9 back on the field.
Absolutely, because he suffered this injury in the end of week 8 against the Jets. He was able to play the next week against the Bears, and for the most part, looked fine, right? There maybe have been a couple of moments where you're like, yeah, maybe he can't push the ball down the field as well. But then he had a bye week. He had an elongated rest period. He's going in against a team that he's played countless times in his career. The expectation was for this team to put up points with all of its players healthy, and that didn't happen because Flacco just wasn't the version of him that started with the Bengals for the previous 4 games. And you can attribute that to the injury. You can attribute that to TJ Watt tackling him into the turf, or into the grass, excuse me. There's no turf at Acrisure Stadium. And you can attribute that to the weather. You can attribute that to just him just being the quarterback that he is at this point, in which sustained success is not necessarily on the table, and that this type of performance is probably inevitable regardless of the injuries. At the end of the day, he's Joe Flacco at this stage in his career. So this probably came a little bit earlier than maybe all of us would have thought. Who knows if the trade in the middle of the season kind of rejuvenated him a little bit, going into a great situation with all these pass catchers, with this offense that frees him up and gets the ball out really quickly. Maybe all that attributed to how insane his production was in the handful of weeks that he was here. But also, Anthony, the Steelers played a different kind of defense this time around. They didn't have the same plan, or the lack of plan, I guess, for the receivers, and it made it a lot tougher. And that's why there wasn't as many easy completions for Flacco to keep in rhythm, and things were a lot harder. And that, I think, compounded with probably the injury issues that he was dealing with his shoulder. Of course, the pick 6 happened, and that is a natural tendency with Flacco over the course of his career, but it was just a different kind of game and a different kind of Flacco. And while the defense, I think, for the most part, was relatively the biggest parenthesis, the biggest asterisk in the world, relatively better, right? It was a point where, like, the offense, if it was at the same level as it has been in the past couple weeks, it was enough for them to potentially win that game. But if the offense took a step back, which it did, what happened, right? The fourth quarter collapse of collapses happened, and that's how it ended up being, I think, a 22-point loss. So yes, to wrap all this up in a bow, it is good timing that now that Joe Flacco is probably back down to earth, who's also dealing with injury, it helps that Burrow is at a point in which he could potentially come back. And maybe you enter a situation on Sunday in which maybe you have both quarterbacks available, and then you kind of make that game time decision. Whatever the case may be, it is good timing at the very least.
A couple of things regarding Flacco. I think also the practice week leading up to the Steelers game, he took it a little light, right? In terms of practice work and that sort of thing, just to rest up a little bit more. And, maybe that you often think of bye weeks as, rest and rejuvenate and come out firing. And maybe sometimes the break is not what you need, I guess, for some people and some teams. The other facet I just want to touch on real quick too. You mentioned, maybe he got rejuvenated and coming to Cincinnati. The other factor to that point is it was likely made known when they made that trade for him. It was likely made known between the team and Flacco. If you're ready, you're the starter for this foreseeable future. He's not looking over his shoulder, really. He's not wondering if Jake Browning's going to come in right away if he makes one mistake, that sort of thing. Kind of like what it probably felt like with 2 rookies behind him in Cleveland. So I think that probably he just settled in. Like you said, the weapons were there and things were going well for a month for the Bengals. Part of the adjustments you mentioned that the Steelers also made Jalen Ramsey to safety because of necessity, but also a complete bracketing of Jamar Chase in this game. And as we know, he was heavily targeted by Flacco over this past month, and hence a lot of the points, et cetera. T. Higgins played pretty well for the most part, but Chase was pretty much a non-factor, had a couple of catches early, and then that was about it. And then, of course, all hell broke loose. And I thought the referees did not have a good grasp of control or some of the calls they made or didn't make. I don't like to do the whole the refs are why they lost type of thing, but I do think there was a semblance of not having control by this officiating crew, and things were obviously said, punches were thrown, and then came a media clip from a Fox 19 media member that has now gotten Chase into hot water. He was suspended for 1 game. He appealed that suspension. The suspension was upheld, so he will not be playing against the Patriots, John. Spitting on people obviously is I mean, not a good act. There's just no two ways around that. There's some people debating, oh, he was kind of just turning his head and spitting, and I only Chase really knows exactly what the intent or lack thereof was. So I'm not going to sit here and, say this or that. But it is what it is. You have to know, you have to have some semblance of control. Jalen Ramsey has been a problem for the Bengals. We know about the AJ Green scuffle years ago. Here's my, it's an overarching complaint. Of course, I don't like to see what I saw from Chase, whether the intent was there or not. As a Cincinnati Bengals, that what the Steelers they like to get under your skin, whether it's words, whether it's questionable hits. There was a questionable hit on T. Higgins in the end zone on his touchdown where he was about 3 or 4 yards into the end zone, and Ramsey still decided to hit him kind of in the neck shoulder area. I thought that was a little questionable. There was another hit on Charlie Jones where he was going out of bounds. A defensive back hit him, and then Charlie Jones kind of said something over his shoulder. He got pushed in the back. That stuff happens with the Steelers. And in the early years of Zach Taylor, he and this team have managed to keep their control, keep their composure, Chase included, despite flipping the double birds a couple years ago, that sort of thing. That all went out the window for the most part this last Sunday. And we can talk about Chase and the suspension and all that, but I talked about the officials potentially losing control of this game, John. I'm worried about the control over this team despite one act.
On that subject, I do think that this game was very, very reminiscent of Bengals Steelers in the past, in which the Steelers played bully ball and they toe the line very well. They've always been able to do that. And a lot of their hits are, I think, questionable is probably the best way to go about it, because they're never flagged. So technically they're not quote unquote dirty because they're not penalized
or illegal. Yeah.
Right. And they don't get, any repercussions out of it. And it does have an impact, I would say, on the other team, specifically the Bengals. Like, we've just seen this song and dance for decades now. It definitely felt like that kind of game. And along with keeping composure, like you said, in the early years of Zach Taylor's era, they've also just been able to just counter it out by just outscoring them and just by being an explosive offense. If you look at just the most successful Bengals games against the Steelers, it's never winning ugly games. It's winning these high scoring games. And it's just utilizing the offense that they've built to basically say, yeah, you can try to have these, massive hits, but if we're just going to run past you, what are you going to do about it? Like, that's always been kind of their answer, because the Steelers very rarely have been able to kind of keep up in some of those shootouts, if you will. Of course, in this game, they scored 27 points on offense and got 7 from a fumble 6, another fumble 6 by Noah Fan, which is quite unfortunate for him, because I don't think either one is really an indication of his hands or anything like that. But regardless, that's just how the game kind of felt. And obviously, not obviously, but I would bet $1,000 that over the course of last week, the message from either Tomlin or any other coach in that meeting room was, do not let Jamar Chase take over this game like he did last time. So do whatever you can to, again, toe the line to make sure that he's never comfortable, and that obviously if Flacco's off of his game, which he was, it just makes it easier, because there were a lot of off-target throws that Chase couldn't really get a hand on, even if he did have like a one-on-one situation. But Chase was never in rhythm in this game. He was completely frustrated, and I think there's a level of frustration over the past few weeks about trying to do as much as he can to carry this offense and just have it not lead to anything. Obviously, his comments after the Bears game kind of says that as well. So I think some of that was boiling over as well. And Jalen Ramsey, being the instigator that he's always been, just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And Jamar Chase did a stupid thing. He did a thing that is worthy of punishment. And the precedent here is that he gets suspended 1 game, because that's what happened essentially retroactively with Jalen Carter. So Jamar Chase was caught spitting in the direction or on Jalen Ramsey. I actually don't know if the loogie landed on Ramsey, but regardless, that's what it looked like. And that's just how the NFL views it. So that's the punishment that he serves. And that is something that he's going to have to live with. I don't think it goes anything beyond that, because I think we all kind of know who Jamar Chase is as a person. And it's just, it was a bad moment in a heat of the moment type situation. And I definitely don't blame Ramsey for reacting the way that he did. I think Tomlin is correct in the sense of, like, if that happens, like, instincts are kind of taking over. I don't love the fact that Mike Tomlin's the one saying that message, considering the fact that he's never had control of his players. But regardless, the spitting happened. It's bad. It's bad for Chase. He was right to be suspended. I understand why it happened, but I also understand that this game just looked a lot like past Bengals and Steelers games, and they've never been able to be successful in them.
Even when it was close, and I think a lot of people who have watched this rivalry over the years can maybe resonate with this. When I saw Darnell Washington truck over 3 guys, and he did it multiple times, even when the game was tight at that point, there were a couple of bully plays by him. I was like, yeah, this feels familiar in not the best way. I credit the Steelers in the fact that what you said, John, is they made adjustments from game to game and in a short window of time on defense to fluster the Bengals. Yes, the words, whatever was said by Ramsey, also contributed to that. The losing contributes to that. And what year was that with AJ Green and Jalen Ramsey? Was that 2016, 2017? It was 2017. So that also, when you couple, there are rumors out there of what Ramsey may have said to AJ Green at that point, which probably was hyper inappropriate. I don't know what was being said here in this one. You're frustrated. I really love that you brought up, Chase's press conferences the past couple of weeks showing the boiling point, coming to a head, right? And so I don't condone stuff that happens, but like you said, there are instincts that take over. There are things that happen with certain words, certain reactions, that sort of thing. And so I don't know, man. All in all, it's ugly, and it's got a lot of Steelers contingent coming out, and the old dirty Bengals stuff and all kinds of different stuff. So the fallout of this, the act itself was ugly. The what, one play prior, 2 plays prior where they were going at it then too, that was getting ugly. Yeah. Everything. And so it all leads to a point now. You're a 3-7 football team. You're seeing frustration boil over. When you go back to Green going off on Jalen Ramsey, you have to figure 2016 was the year after that frustrating loss to the Steelers in the wild card. Then you're not going to be a playoff team in 2017. AJ Green, likely frustrated, heard some things you would think by Jalen Ramsey that he absolutely did not like. But unfortunately, losing bubbles up this frustration. And there were talks then about Marvin Lewis potentially losing the team, losing the locker room, all that kind of stuff. I don't want to speculate that on Zach Taylor, but when you see this, you see the lack of defensive performance, you see all kinds of different things. You really start to question about the future of this team, what happens next year, who's here, who's not. The Bengals may make a run at things if and when Burrow comes back and or Flacco heals, but for me, it has me that single act and these losses that pile up, it has me wondering a lot about 2026.
Well, the optics of Chase being the center of this is not good because he's got the C on his chest, and also he's the best player on the field. Hendrickson's not there. Joe Burrow's not there. He's the guy that everyone needs to rally behind and follow in his lead. And when he's only has 3 receptions on 10 targets because half those targets are 5 feet away from him because the quarterback is having an off day, right? Like it doesn't help, right? And to your point, like Jalen Ramsey obviously had that late hit on that over route in which didn't get called. There was tensions rising throughout that. It wasn't like Jamar Chase just found a random Steeler to spit on, right? It was been bullying up to that point, and that's not us condoning. It's just us explaining why that happened and just how that situation can arise in itself. Ramsey played the troll part correctly. He got disqualified for it, unfortunately for him. But I think there was a message of don't let Jamar Chase do Jamar Chase things, and mission accomplished. And that's how the Bengals only had, I think, 9 or 12 points at that point in the game. Maybe they ended up kicking the field goal after that, right? Yeah, they ended up kicking the field goal after that. But the game was probably out of their hands at that point. And yeah, like in the early part of the game, when the defense just again continued to not know how to tackle and not know how to, have a pursuit angle, you kind of figured that, it wasn't about a bye week getting things right. It's just about there's just not enough horsepower on this team to get the job done against some of these good teams. And I think the more that you see that, the more that they see that, the more it kind of resonates and just kind of establishes who they are. And there's only so much that, the face of the team, Zach Taylor, can do and say at this point. He's always going to back his players. He backed Jamar Chase. He didn't condone what he said, but of course he backed who Jamar is as a person. He backed the rest of the team. He backed the players and the coaches. That message just becomes stale when everyone realizes that it's just not good enough. And that's why I think everyone's looking towards what's going to happen next, because you can't just continue to say that all the answers are in the building. I have full confidence in these guys when that confidence just doesn't actually exist. And I know that Zach is doing everything that he can to empower them, but when the results just aren't there, that's why I think everyone kind of feels like this is all kind of coming to an end or coming to a head, and that it's just not the message that unfortunately this team needs right now.
And yeah, you've got a potentially historically bad defense. I think I saw a tweet, and forgive me, I don't know who it was that put it out there, that showed PFF defensive and tackling scores of rookie players, and the three bottom guys are Shamar Stewart, Demetrius Knight, and Barrett Carter in no particular order. So when you use 3 of your first 4 picks in a draft class that you have less picks than normal, if you're the Bengals, you use 3 of your first 4 picks and you have 3 of the bottom graded PFF scoring players in the rookie class and a couple of different metrics. That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign. So Chase will not be available for the Bengals against the Patriots. And I don't know, man. Like I said, these next couple of days will be very interesting to see what Joe Burrow's practice status is. As he was limited last week, there were more rumblings. Okay, it's going to be Thanksgiving. He's back for the Ravens game. But again, you lose a division game and do so in the way that you did. Maybe things change. Maybe there is a ramp up, and maybe things are feeling better on Burrow's end, more so than we thought at this point. But regardless, the Bengals have a big game coming up on Sunday at Paycor Stadium. And this is a team that, as I said, I called them resurgent, and under a new head coach, they are doing some good things. They're not rookie quarterback, second-year quarterback is playing pretty well. And now what are they, 8-2? The Patriots have the best 9-2, excuse me. The best record in the NFL. The Bengals, per FanDuel, our presenting sponsor. The Bengals, as of Wednesday evening, are 7-point underdogs at home. The over-under is set at 50.5. Vrabel's got them playing solid across the board. There's not a ton of big stars on this team, but it's the Patriot way, right? I will say this: Cincinnati has given Vrabel some fits over the years in important games, particularly when Burrow has played in them. But there have also been examples where his team has gotten the better of the Bengals as well. Just initial reaction to the FanDuel line of the Bengals being 7-point underdogs at home. Fair, justified? I think I know your answer, but go for it.
Yeah, I was trying to check the line right before Chase's suspension was announced and right after. I think it may have moved maybe 1.5 points. And I don't know if that was because maybe the fine folks at FanDuel knew something about Burrow potentially returning. I would have thought that Chase would have impacted more than just 1.5 points in that spread. But I mean, obviously, if you're factoring in 3 points or 2 points for being home, this is a 10-point spread in a neutral site, and it's a difference between 6 wins between 2 teams. I know the Patriots have some strength of schedule weaknesses, if you will. Like maybe they haven't beaten a ton of quality teams.
Yeah.
But the over-under is interesting to me now because, again, without Chase, you don't know who the quarterback is going to be for the Bengals. The Patriots can score points, but I don't think people are treating this Bengals offense as like, oh, they're just going to have to keep up with their defense and score 35, 40 points. I think there's a lot of doubt with that. So the under feels a little bit safer to me at this point because of how much uncertainty it is. But I mean, yeah, I think most people would expect the Patriots to be pretty close or handle that spread of theirs.
So if you feel so inclined, go to our presenting sponsor, FanDuel.com, and place some bets on this game or other games in states where it's applicable. And of course, please bet responsibly. But we thank FanDuel for being a sponsor of our show and a partner across the Believe podcast network, as well as FOCO, the fans only company. Both of those are linked in the show descriptions in the Cincy Jungle Facebook stream, as well as our YouTube channel. So go click those and get after it. We appreciate their support, and we appreciate your support of our show. I know some things are better when the team wins and more exciting and all that kind of stuff, but we're seeing a lot of familiar faces. We're seeing a lot of new faces, at least in the live chats or comments afterward. We appreciate your support, and you can continue to check out our stuff on the Orange and Black Insider on our YouTube channel, and of course through your favorite streaming platform on the Believe in Cincy podcast channel, along with a number of other great Bengals podcasts. We've got a handful of them on our channel, so go check all of those out. Leave us a review, hopefully a 5-star one if you could, and give us a thumbs up on the YouTube channel. Despite having to look at our ugly mugs, well, John's a handsome guy. Randall's a handsome guy. I'm not. But regardless, we appreciate all your support, and keep it to our channel throughout the season. Even the off season, we'll talk all kinds of different stuff. But it's not over, John. It's not over until it's over. And 3-7, the Bengals have, I believe, the most updated odds I have seen to make the playoffs is 0.5% at this point. So that, but the issue is, they now have half of their division games in the books. They have 2 against the Ravens and a season finale against the Browns. If the Bengals are going to either run the table or only lose one to be in contention, it would seem the only route, really feasible route, is the division. They probably need to win the remaining 3 games in the division at this point. It's not just the amount of wins; it's now who it's against, right? So when you have early season losses to Denver, and there's so many others we could point to. Thankfully, some of them have been non-conference losses, right? Minnesota, Green Bay, Detroit, basically the whole NFC North, right? At this point. This is now, because it's conference games and there's still a slew of division games. This is now where the Bengals need to start their run, as they tend to do this time of year. We don't know if Joe Burrow's coming back this week, and that's what kind of clouds this whole preview against the Patriots. But like you said, I like that you brought up the quality of opponents that New England has played, because that's been kind of the biggest thing against them. And really, if I think back, and I may be misremembering, that's been a little bit of what was a small criticism of Vrabel and Tennessee, right? I mean, their division, they played a what was largely a pretty poor Jacksonville team twice a year, an Indy team that was going through all kinds of different quarterback stuff twice a year. So that was kind of a little bit of a criticism of Vrabel. I don't think it's super founded, but it's there. And that's kind of coming back again as a narrative with him as head coach of the New England Patriots.
The problem for this week is that the Bengals are not a quality opponent. So it's not like
correct.
You just throw that out the window at the end of the day. But no, I
guess we should lump them right in, right? Yeah.
I think the Patriots still deserve immense respect because they have arguably the MVP of the league at quarterback right now.
He's playing well.
He's balling, and it's been a great fit for him in just the classic Josh McDaniels type offense, which I think has really helped out like Kayshon Boutte, who I thought should have been a Bengals draft target a couple of years ago, five-star recruit out of LSU, wide receiver, but now he's kind of doing well as a starter. Stephon Diggs is a little bit inconsistent, but he still can do Stephon Diggs type things. And Drake May throws arguably not even arguably, I think he throws the best deep ball in the NFL right now. So when you have an offense that knows how to move the chains and create stuff underneath and create stuff over the middle, with also a quarterback that can push the ball down the field better than any other quarterback, like that's a recipe for disaster for a Bengals defense that clearly has a lot of issues in the back end with their safeties and a lot of communication problems and a lot of issues tackling underneath. So this is a Patriots offense, and I didn't even mention the run game, right? Ramondre Stevenson, who is I think limited right now in terms of his health status, he rushed for like 120 yards and 2 touchdowns last year against a similar type of Bengals defense last year. And he's not even their starter right now. Travion Henderson has really exploded in the past couple of weeks. He's a really explosive runner, and if you give him a crease, he's gonna pay. He's gonna cost you.
Going to make you pay. Yes.
Going to make you pay. There's cool data as well for this Patriots offense, in which they're one of the best teams in terms of rushing off the tackles, and obviously the Bengals are not good at defending the run in any one of their gaps. So running behind Will Campbell, who's their first round pick this year, just a tenacious run blocker. Morgan Moses, who's still doing it at like age 33 or something like that. He's still starting at right tackle. Both those guys have been really good in that regard. So that's just, I don't think there's anything tricky with what the Patriots are planning to do. They have a quarterback that can attack on all 3 levels of the field. And now Travion Henderson's heating up with a run game that is going to attack the edges for a Bengals defense that right now has like half their defensive end group is hurt. So I don't know.
When you describe this team, John, this Patriots team, it reminds me of it makes me think of a leveled up prime Titans team that Vrabel took pretty far, right? You have an athletic quarterback who has a big arm and can make big, deep throws on the run. You said he's got maybe the best deep ball. Some of those are when he's rolling out and he's throwing dots while he's rolling out. So you could laugh at Tannehill, but there were a couple of years where Tannehill had a renaissance in Tennessee, and it was play action, Derrick Henry, physical, and use the athleticism of Ryan Tannehill to, if it is a play action or a boot or that sort of thing, use that with his big arm and athleticism to their advantage and play good defense. Not a ton of big names on that Titans team either. They got more household names as they made the playoffs a couple of times, but it's very, very similar with an improved quarterback. It seems right now with with what Vrabel's trying to recreate in New England. Now, I'm not ready to say Henderson or anything like that is the next Derrick Henry, but he looks pretty good, and he was damn good in college. So, the Bengals defense will have their hands full. Cam Taylor-Britt probably, I don't know if it's been official that he's headed to IR yet or not, but he's got, was it a Liz Frank injury or something to that effect? So, like you said, the battered secondary is going to be a problem, and the tackling, the only hope for the Bengals is because like we said, they looked more competent, which is not really a hard task based on previous weeks, but they looked more competent this week against the Steelers a bit. Now you just got to hope, okay, was that a building block? It looks like Trey Hendrickson may not be available this week either, but, Miles Murphy, I thought, was disruptive early in that Steelers game.
Yep.
And I want to give him kudos there. BJ Hill made a couple of plays. And, they were early in that game flying around a little bit more and, seemed a little bit more revved up in this one. Maybe it was just because it was the Steelers or what have you. Maybe they're just tired of the noise about their unit. Maybe it's all kinds of different factors. But there was a sense of a little bit of optimism with the defense in their performance last week. But as has been the case the last couple of years with this team, they cannot play complementary football and do it all really at the same time consistently across all 3 phases. So that now has to be the calling card of the Bengals if they're going to make any kind of hope and prayer to make the playoffs and win a bunch of games at the end of the season here.
Can anyone make just like a one-on-one open field tackle? I haven't seen it necessarily.
I don't think so. I really don't. Not with this crew. We haven't seen it.
Yeah, so I think some of the best moments were like there was a lot of rallying to the football, like
That
after moving
that
behind the
yeah.
line of scrimmage. Like that was definitely apparent. That was evident. It was evident that there was also schematic changes, at least up front. They not debuted, but like they more prominently featured like an odd front, a 3-4 front for their, their front seven. And I think that helped out guys like Miles Murphy, McKinley Jackson got some more playing time. And like there were some promising things with that where they weren't necessarily, ran over in terms of the run game outside of the first drive, which Jalen Warren found a crease and ran for like 30 something yards. But once it gets to the second level, man, it's like Barrett Carter still has like concrete blocks for feet. And Demetrius Knight is still missing tackles. And Geno Stone is missing every tackle possible, man. It's like if they can keep things contained within the hashes, things can be okay and they can try to survive on third down. But even that was an abysmal showcase against the Steelers, right? They gave up so many third and longs in which their work on first and second down was nullified. So now, again, you have a better quarterback who, obviously Aaron Rodgers didn't finish that game. Mason Rudolph came in, made some very easy throws and made it just look easy against the Bengals defense. I have a quarterback that's playing well, a better offensive line, and just a better overall collection of skill players. It's going to take a lot for this Bengals defense to build off of what they did. And I do think that there were some minor building blocks in terms of what they were able to do and were able to change. But I think all of that was kind of nullified by the limitations of who they are. And they're just not a physical team that's capable of tackling and capable of getting off the field.
It seemed as if the rallying to the ball, like you mentioned, and that's a great call, that it started on the defensive line and then guys kind of flew, they weren't escaping first contact as much, or there was more contact at the line, more so than there was in previous weeks. And then thus the linebackers came up and were able to clean up the tackle. Like you said, the open space, I go back to, I can't remember if it was Carter or Knight, but he was covering Freiermuth, right? Kind of in the flat. It was like a short 3 or 4 yard deal. And instead of just kind of planting his feet and kind of shadowing where Freiermuth went, he kind of just, it seemed like guessed and went around the other way. Freiermuth cut back in and ended up being a big play type of thing. So if they can kind of sort of emulate that rallying on that mid-level of their defense, where a guy gets the hands on the ball carrier, doesn't immediately slide off of the guy and just kind of hang on and let someone else come in and help him clean up. Again, limiting those plays that should not go for so many yards at the mid-level or even the short area. That's they need to build upon that. And I don't, maybe this is the week that they do that, just because the Patriots have good offensive weapons, but it's not a star-studded pass-catching crew, that sort of thing. But I don't know. Like you said, minor building blocks you hope turn into stepping stones again towards the end of this year, but it has largely looked abysmal.
And even if they do make progress on defense, we still don't know what kind of offense that this team is going to roll out there. We don't know if Burrow's going to be rusty, if he is playing, if he's going to be his normal self, if it's going to be Joe Flacco trying to push through pain. Patriots defense is a good solid group of players without a superstar aside from Christian Gonzalez. So I think he's really budding into that. Christian Barmore, I believe, is going to be limited, or he was limited in practice earlier this week. Kalavion Chason, Harold Landry, who obviously is very familiar with Mike Vrabel. So it's just like a Robert Spillane, who the Bengals know very well for his time with the Steelers. Like, it's just a good collection group of talent. And without Jamar Chase, I think they probably are hoping that Mike Gesicki comes back. He was a full participant in practice as well, so he was just cleared to practice along with Dajon Anthony. You would think that Gesicki, if he's able to play and able to start, like, there's a handful of targets that you replace the average of 14 targets a game that Jamar Chase is getting with Joe Flacco. Mitchell Tinsley comes to mind as like the obvious replacement for him in the starting lineup because he's the fourth receiver on the depth chart and he never sees the field because you don't want to take T. Higgins and Jamar Chase off of it. And you really trust Tinsley on the outside where he runs those routes and was able to do all the great things in preseason and the very limited things he's done in the regular season. So I would expect Tinsley, if he's not starting, he's going to play a lot more than he has in any other game this year. And Jermaine Burton is probably going to be active because they just need him to play. But, I mean, he hasn't played all season. I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of trust in him to actually make a difference. So maybe he sees the field here and there, but I would just imagine I would bet so much money that Mitchell Tinsley. I'm not going to say that. I would imagine Mitchell Tinsley fills in at least a little bit or the most for anyone who's going to fill in for Jamar Chase, because you're not going to replace Jamar Chase with just one player, but you want to feature Mike Gesicki a little bit more. You want to see what he can do against his former team, give Mitchell Tinsley a little bit more chances, and hope that T. Higgins can have the type of games that he had when Jamar Chase missed a handful of games back in 2022.
I think coverage is going to be bracketed to T pretty regularly, so other guys are going to need to make plays. And again, go to FanDuel and maybe look at putting a bet on Mitchell Tinsley. Every time he's got the Chris Evans effect, right? I mean, every time he touches the ball, it's like a huge play. I think because of injuries in particular, and I know it sounds silly to say that given the record disparity between the two teams, but I think just given the injuries and or suspensions to star players, questions, I just think the Bengals are pretty well overmatched in this game. But this, I know we talk about, this is a big game and crossroads game. I think this game is the make or break for the Bengals season. I mean, obviously at 7, if you're forced to win 6 straight games at the end of the season, when you go to Buffalo, you have 2 against Baltimore. This is the one that I think makes or break. That you look to next offseason if you lose this one. I do think if you're asking for a prediction, which nobody did, I'll just pretend that somebody did. I do think though the Bengals. I do. I think the Bengals make it interesting. I think it's a close game. I think they give it a really solid effort, despite who's at quarterback and despite no Chase, likely no Henderson, no Taylor Britt, that sort of thing. But I just think there are too many guys out, too many questions for them to sneak a win in this one. I hope I'm wrong and they can kind of, grab some momentum here at the end. But I think this is just a very well-rounded Patriots team. I almost keep calling them the Titans just because of Vrabel. Very well-rounded Patriots team. And I just think it's going to be a little too much to handle. Even if the defense is taking small baby steps of strides, I mean, we're talking about 1 week, so I don't know.
Right. I mean, I don't know how many must-win games a team can have, but it seemed like the Bears was kind of must-win. It seemed like the Steelers was definitely must-win. This is now obviously must-win. In those situations, the Bengals have surprised me more times than not. I think if Burrow does play and he's able to be himself, I think there's a chance in which this game starts out pretty ugly. Patriots take a commanding lead. Burrow may need a full half to really just kind of get reacclimated. Maybe they make some noise. For whatever reason, I'm just going to assume that he plays or that they're going to get better quarterback play compared to last week. And they can make it interesting in the end. But I just think you're right. Like the talent, like the overall ability disparity, if you will. I don't even know if the Patriots are that much more talented, but they're playing a hell of a lot better, and that has to be respected. And that has to have more weight than just talent at this point. So I would say the Patriots are just the better overall football team. They're better in every sort of matchup that you can point to, which is why I think
coaching level, everything. Yeah.
Coaching, especially. So I would say Patriots 31, Bengals 21. Bengals may make it a little bit interesting at the end, but I just don't think it's going to be enough.
Yeah, and this is a little segue into our mic drop here. I mean, I know people are like, I'll just get a high draft pick at this point, blah blah blah. But it's not the best case scenario is the Bengals somehow pull out a miracle and make the playoffs and make some noise. But really, what you should be asking for at this point, especially based on everything this team has gone through over the the last 2.5 months or whatever it's been, just be interesting and be competitive and kind of like last year where they're like, they're not going to make the playoffs, but they were in it until the evening games of the final week of the season, right? I mean, that ultimately is what you want. Yeah, there'll be the cynics that say, it won't precipitate change, and you might be right, but I don't know. For me, covering this team, you and I getting together and talking about the team, I don't know. I don't really want to be doing prospect profiles for a 3-win team in December right? I'd rather be talking about, hey, I mean, they're making it interesting. They're putting up a fight. And you could also make the argument, even with the dead cat bounce and all that kind of stuff, you can make the argument that putting up a fight despite all this crap that they've gone through this year does play into the corner of Zach Taylor and some of those people if they don't give up on that. But I understand there are some tankers out there, the people that want the Bengals to do really, really poorly to get high picks. And yeah, those are the ones they hit on the most. But at this point, when you have so many superstars and so many superstars now locked up long term, going for the tank deal doesn't really appeal to me. And so that's a little bit of a mic drop on my end, as well as even if you're rivals, you're a fan of a rival team or whatever, don't be an idiot on social media to other people. Don't send threats. Everybody's tough behind an avatar and a keyboard, right? Just engage in, I don't know, engage correctly with people. Just because you're anonymous doesn't make you invincible. This week was tiring in that respect for myself. But anyway, what's your mic drop, John?
On that point, one of my favorite tweets of all time is hi, my name is first name bunch of numbers and I have incredibly shitty opinions. Saw that a handful of times this week.
Yeah, with like the AI avatar, right? The generic AI avatar. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Exactly.
On the tanking point, they play the Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Ravens back to back weeks.
Yep.
I don't think tanking's gonna have anything to do with it personally, but I'm with you. Like this team typically does better than expected in December to make things interesting, but probably not going to be enough. And that's just how it's going to be. But I did want to highlight, and I want to make this a theme for the final 7 weeks, in case it does get ugly. Throw in some funny comments in here, and I want to read them off at the end of the show. So I'm going to do that right now. Dan the Man, I vote that Geno Stone sits in favor of Randall.
Oh, yeah, I saw that earlier. Yeah.
Les Hernandez has two that I want to, or has one that I want to point out. Saying, senior sure Anthony makes me feel like not even the Hulk could help this defense. I happen to agree there as well. I also want to question what Pork Chop said. You look good for a husky fella, AC. What do you mean by that, Pork Chop? What do you mean by that?
Oh, you don't know this story?
No,
I haven't told. Oh, buddy, I thought I've told you this story many times. Maybe I haven't. I've had one interaction with owner Mike Brown. And this goes all the way back to 2013. I think it was November, December of 2013 in San Diego. I saw him in the lobby of a hotel down there. Players were cruising through and a lot of Bengal fans and all kinds of stuff. And I just went out. There's a shirt. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of dark. See that white shirt above the case up there?
Nah, I can't.
That's framed. Okay, well, it's a Cincy Jungle shirt signed by. It's got the Cincy Jungle logo, and for some reason, I don't know. I was a couple drinks in, and we had a Sharpie, and they were signing this shirt. All these people were signing this shirt. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go to Mike Brown, and I just walk up to him, and I just said, Mr. Brown, how are you? Great job of late, because since 2011 and 2013 they were doing pretty good. Side note, James Harrison's the biggest human being I've ever seen in my entire life, at least rectangular wise. But so he goes, oh, of late is the operative term, isn't it? And typical snarky guy response. And I just kind of was like, okay, this isn't going so great. And then he goes, did you play? And I like football. Did you play football? I'm like, a little bit, but I was more baseball. And he's all, oh, you're husky. He called me husky. Now, in my vernacular, husky isn't necessarily a compliment. I feel like I go to the gym. I lift weights. I do a lot of stuff. And so I was like, oh, me, 200 and whatever I was, 220 pounds, 225 pounds, you're making me feel like 325, buddy. So the Bengals and Brews guys, I told that story to all of them, and they thought it was the funniest thing of all time. So Husky, they call me Husky. So our nicknames, in case you don't know, on other shows that we've done appearances on and that we're friends with, they call us Husky in the Brain. You're the brain, and I'm Husky. So that is a hell of a way to sign off on the Orange and Black Insider. John, that is my interaction with Mike Brown, calling me Husky about 12 years ago now.
Yeah, some things surprise me and some things don't. I'm just gonna file that into the not surprising folder there. But
he was super nice though. He was super nice. I said snarky comment. He was very nice. He could have been like, I'm a billionaire, get away from me, right? And just been like, oh God, you're gonna give me hell. And he was totally cool. And he walked in a hotel lobby that you would have thought it was just a regular Joe coming off the street, that there was nothing, no big entourage or no big, I mean, he had some people around him, but it wasn't like some big security entourage or anything like that. It was just him casually strolling through the lobby. And yeah, so that's Mike Brown, and that's my story.
In fairness, like I've had 2 interactions with him, and the reason why I say it doesn't surprise me is because Mike Brown reminded me a lot of my grandfather, and my grandfather was known to say, some interesting things, but
zero filter, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
just a guy who's seen it all, and like it doesn't have necessarily like bad intent, but like, oh, I don't know if you should have said that, but whatever. You're an old nice man, whatever.
Yeah, it's like a grandparent, like you haven't seen him for a little bit, and they come up with they'll poke you in the chops and be like, oh, you've been eating well, right? Like it's like it's like, God dang. All right, well, I'm hitting the gym in the morning before the game, I guess. Which, by the way, we did see Lapham and Tobin in the gym. I did go to the gym that morning. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm waking up and going to the gym after that comment. But they were in there. Lapham was getting his work in for sure. But anyway, we're going off on a tangent. I love that. We should do this now. I mean, I try and pin comments throughout. We try and answer different comments or questions throughout. We haven't done one for a while, listener question show. But I like this mic drop. Maybe best comments of the show. I like that. Best. Yeah. Let's do that. Maybe we'll implement that. But hey, we love all of you, and I got to go hit the treadmill talking about Husky again. But we love all of you. Thank you for tuning in to us. John, you're the man, buddy. This has been the Orange and Black Insider, part of the Believe in Cincy and the Believe Podcast Network, brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and FOCO, the fans only company. Everybody take care. We'll be back with more covering the Bengals. If there's more news on Burrow, we'll probably hit the airwaves again later this week if he's going to start. But we'll see. Take care. John, I'll see you, buddy.
Peace.